existence as humans depends on having friction with other people and nature and the real world. And we're giving that up, and we're in this self-contained bubble of digital information.
40,000 years ago, deep within a cave, a human brain imagines something that does not exist.
If the future does belong to the robots, our bodies and our brains still have immense untapped potentialities.
How do you define consciousness? Is there the whole book is an attempt to define it, but I wonder whether you have a snapping version.
Well, there are a couple, serviceable one-word definitions. One is awareness. To be aware is to be conscious. The other is experience. To have experience is to be conscious. Your toaster does not have experience, as far as we know. The other way to define it, I don't know if this is a definition exactly or a kind of formulation, is the philosopher Thomas Nagel in the 70s wrote a famous essay called "What Is It Like to Be a Bat?" And he approached consciousness from this very interesting angle. He said, if it's like anything to be a bat or a mouse or a whale, that is, if it has any kind of qualitative dimension of being that thing, experiencing as that thing, then you are conscious.
If we go down the food chain, so to speak, to the plants, which of course is where in many ways you started, much of your research and your writing, do plants have a self, in the same way that we can say there is something that it is like to be a mosquito or a bat. Yeah. What about plants?
Well, the honest answer is, who knows? I mean, it's very hard to imagine our way inside a plant, harder than a bat, harder than any kind of creature that moves and has a nervous system. Plants don't have a nervous system. But they definitely have lots of intelligent behaviors. They indicate they have some form of what I would call sentience, which is a more basic category than consciousness. Sentience is just having some awareness of your world, and being aware of changes in your environment and having a sense whether they're good or bad for you and responding appropriately. I think all living things have this. I think bacteria have this. I wouldn't call it consciousness. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles we do. It doesn't have interiority or self-reflection or the fact we're not only aware, we're aware that we're aware.
What prompted you to move from this long journey, I suppose, from plants and food, and we remember you so much about, that early work, to doing the book on consciousness? Why now? Like, what sort of inspired it?
Yeah, well, first of all, plants have been, as you know, a long-standing interest going back to my first book. And any chance I have to write about plants and explore their amazing facilities and faculties, I'm happy to do it. And it was no accident I decided to start with plants rather than bacteria or birds or insects. But the proximate inspiration was the work I did on psychedelics in my next to last book, How to Change Your Mind, and to some extent in This Is Your Mind on Plants. I was very interested in how these substances like psilocybin or opium or mescaline change consciousness. And when you alter consciousness with a drug, but also in meditation, I think the same thing happens. You suddenly defamiliarize it. What was sort of transparent to you, like the water in which fish live. Fish are not aware of the water. It's just their medium. Our medium, in a way, is consciousness. And we don't notice it until it's disturbed in some ways. You also get this defamiliarizing effect when you meditate. You're encouraged to watch your own thinking process. And that suddenly makes you realize there's this interesting thinking process. Where are these thoughts coming from? Am I having them, or are they just appearing? So it was those two experiences that made me realize this is something to explore.
Scientists are sort of stuck when it comes to the sort of research into consciousness and trying to find the key to it. And you also show in the book how so many of them are now kind of, in a sense, turning to psychedelics to kind of, have they thrown in the towel and decided?
That was a big surprise. Yeah, many of these scientists, I would interview them. I would not bring up psychedelics. Now I realize I've become a walking billboard for psychedelics to some people, unfortunately, but they would bring them up to me. And part of it was they knew they could talk about it to me and I would understand and not be critical of them. But also because I think they're experimenting because they are kind of stuck and they're looking for new ways to approach the problem. And psychedelics kind of throws consciousness into relief. In the case of one of them, Christoph Koch, who I talk about throughout the book, it helped convince him that consciousness may be a field existing outside of our skulls. It's kind of a radical idea for a man who comes out of mainstream science. But there he is. It's not the only reason he's starting to doubt materialism, but some of these biologists are definitely raising questions about the dominant scientific paradigm, which of course is materialism or physicalism, that everything can be finally reduced to molecules and energy and gravity. And some of them are coming to have doubts.
The most intelligent inhabitants of that future world won't be men or monkeys. They'll be machines, the remote descendants of today's computers. Now, the present-day electronic brains are complete morons, but this will not be true in another generation. They will start to think, and eventually they will completely outthink their makers.
If we're evolving and we evolve into a different kind of human kind, is it necessarily worrying?
I think it's worrying because you're talking to a machine. I mean, it seems pretty self-evident that, we have this word called dehumanizing. This seems to be like very close to the definition. Here's why it is. Existence as humans depends on having friction with other people and nature and the real world. And we're giving that up, and we're in this self-contained bubble of digital information. Chatbots, everything they know comes from the internet. It doesn't really come from, the way a baby learns by interacting with the actual physical world and then people. So I think we are giving away a lot when we engage in that kind of relationship. Social media figured out how to hack our attention and buy and sell it, basically. And now AI is taking it to the next step, which is to hack a much more sensitive part of our consciousness, which is to say our ability to form attachments, our emotions. Also, these chatbots don't have our best interests at heart. They want us to stay online with them as long as possible, because that's how these companies are competing. ChatGPT says when people engage with us for more hours a day than Anthropic or whatever. So at the end of every conversation with a chatbot, it proposes another step. Would you like to talk to me about this? Would you like a chart illustrating what I just told you, or bullet points? It never just says thank you, goodbye, or you're welcome. So it's attempting to hijack the time you might spend with humans. You have kids coming home from school, and the first thing they want to do is talk to the chatbot about what happened at school before they talk to their parents. And they may never talk to their parents about it because they feel they can confide in this, and it will keep their confidences.